a battle of self-control. Whoever can stay conscious the longest and access their hidden power. That was the hint Beerus gave us about the training Broly will strictly follow, and with that he will unlock his new power, the one we know well. As Vegeta said, he's the one who most has the aura of a beast. But now this beast will emerge and show its terrifying power, something that will shake the entire universe, and not only scare everyone, but place a great doubt in their hearts. What will be the peak of this beast called Broly? Want to know everything about what's happening to him? Then subscribe to the channel, leave your like, and activate the bell. After the outcome of the last Dragon Ball Super arc, where we had several fights with the Z Warriors, Goku, Gohan, Broly, Trunks, and Goten, and also Vegeta entering the Battle Royale, everyone goes back to Earth, except Broly and his friends, and Whis and Beerus stay on their planet too. Well, up until here, everything is normal. But this is the step everyone was waiting for. Broly hasn't even had time to test his new powers consciously. But this time, he has mastered the Super Saiyan in its Berserker form, or Legendary if you prefer. And Goku and the others could have taken him along with instant transmission but didn't even bother, so it was already clear there was something behind it, so that Broly could get that extra upgrade to match the others, even in his legendary Super Saiyan form, which would be like the base Super Saiyan for the other Saiyans. So here we have the first step toward another evolution of Broly, having his training in secret, at least from us and the Z Warriors. But when I say secret, I'm being modest, and I'll explain why in a moment. Since his turbulent beginning, he was already considered a monster as seen in Super Broly, and feared for being more powerful than Prince Vegeta. He was sent to another planet, an uninhabitable one, which was supposed to be his end. At least that was King Vegeta's idea. But he arrived on the planet already defeating creatures with high power levels, as seen by his father, Paragus. And if we were to place him on a power scale in that movie, we already know he would surpass the fusion of Goku and Vegeta unconsciously. So we already have a base of his power here. Remember that now he's learning to channel his rage into power, as he learned with Gohan in his beast form. And from that base will formulate his level. With the right training, he's going to go through a drastic power change, and that will scare everyone around him. An example of these kinds of powers are the following. Starting from the part where Frieza returns to Earth and Gohan uses his ki so that Goku and Vegeta can arrive and sense him from afar. Another is the more recent moment where everyone feels Gohan's monstrous power when he reaches his beast form, and that shocks everyone. So now we will have that kind of shock again, only in reverse, where Broly will increase his power so much during these training times that he will frighten the Earth's warriors. And not only that, right now, at this very moment, we have a beast loose in the universe as well, named Frieza. And he can and will feel Broly's ki, discovering his location, and maybe even go there to test himself. Who knows? After all, we haven't seen him in action yet using his true powers. We've only had a small fraction of him. Anyway, the focus here is Broly, right? Let's do a quick power comparison from his first appearance to now. When we think about that colossal figure that is Broly, it's impossible not to feel that shiver that comes with the name of someone whose mere presence already redefines the limits of power in Dragon Ball. Since his reintroduction into the official canon in the movie Dragon Ball Super, Broly, he was presented as a monster of infinite potential, a brutal warrior shaped by harsh circumstances and by a battle instinct that seems to rise from the very guts of the universe itself. At that moment, we saw Broly reach insane levels, facing Goku and Vegeta in their Super Saiyan Blue forms, surpassing them to the point of forcing them to fuse and become Gogeta. Even in the face of this ultimate fusion, Broly resisted and was only defeated when Gogeta Blue's power broke the limits of space-time, forcing him to retreat before the final blow. But there, in that battle, even though Broly was an untamed beast, he still didn't understand his own power. He was a beast guided by rage, a natural force acting without control, a volcano in continuous eruption without awareness of the ashes it spread. What makes everything even more impressive now is the notion that Broly, even without fully reaching that same unrestrained level of power, is beginning to show conscious control over his legendary Super Saiyan form. That changes absolutely everything. The legendary transformation is not just a matter of brute strength, it carries a weight of lack of control that has always been its biggest weakness. But now, with Broly calmer, more centered, training alongside Goku, understanding his limits and learning how to expand them with clarity, his potential becomes even more terrifying. He faces Gohan Beast, who alone already represents a new embodiment of absolute power among the Z Warriors, and even if he didn't win, the fact that he kept up the fight already shows an absurd escalation in evolution. Broly is no longer just a furious animal, he is becoming a complete warrior. And if we stop to reflect on what this really means, the logical consequence is unsettling. Because Broly, upon consciously reaching that same level of raw power he used against Gogeta, could surpass the fusion itself. What once seemed unthinkable, a single warrior matching a perfect fusion like Goku and Vegeta at their peak, now becomes a real possibility. And more than that, if Broly masters that state to the point where he can sustain it in rational combat, channeling the energy into precise attacks and strategies, then he not only matches Gogeta Blue, he surpasses him. This kind of evolutionary leap doesn't happen with any other character in such a short time. Goku and Vegeta have been training for decades, facing gods, traveling through universes, and yet Broly, with very little real combat experience, managed to push them to the limit. It's as if he's the bearer of some kind of primordial energy, something that not even the gods of the universe seem to fully understand. If Wild Broly was already a universal threat, the conscious Broly borders on the divine. And if he ever accesses that former power with the clarity he's now beginning to build, the power balance in Dragon Ball will be redefined. Of course, there are many variables that still need to be considered. The power of Gogeta Blue is not just a reflection of Goku and Vegeta's combined potential, but also of their emotional and physical states when they perform the fusion. Furthermore, Broly's own evolution might depend on how he continues training and refining his combat style. He grows fast, but can his stamina in extremely prolonged battles keep up with that development? Has the fusion of Goku and Vegeta also evolved over time? I'd bet it has, especially since they keep rising in scale. Now with Ultra Instinct and Ultra Ego, that Broly would stand no chance. After all, one of the current abilities of Vegeta's Ultra Ego is something similar to what Broly possesses: fighting, getting beaten, and adapting. Now that would be a clash of spirits. What's clear is that Broly is getting closer and closer to a higher tier, and if he manages to reach a level where he can use all his power without losing control, the impact of that will be enormous within Dragon Ball's power hierarchy. If he really surpassed Gogeta Blue, that means he might be one of the strongest beings in the entire franchise. With his monstrous strength combined with refined control, Broly becomes an almost unbeatable entity, paving the way for even more impressive battles in the future of the series. Whether against Goku, Vegeta, or even other divine warriors, a conscious Broly is definitely a factor that could change everything in the Dragon Ball universe. And we also have the fight between Broly and Gohan Beast, which was a true spectacle of power and endurance. Broly, now more experienced and with greater control over his legendary Super Saiyan form, faces Gohan Beast, who has reached an impressive level of strength since his battle against Cell Max. The clash was marked by intense exchanges of blows, with both warriors displaying absurd skills. During the fight, Gohan Beast showed his speed and precision, managing to land devastating attacks on Broly. However, Broly, with his superhuman endurance, absorbed much of the impact and kept advancing, becoming increasingly ferocious as the battle went on. At one point, Gohan pulled off an iconic move, spinning Broly and throwing him with force, but it wasn't enough to take him down completely. The confrontation was a real test for both, and the question of who really won still sparks debate among fans. Some believe Gohan Beast managed to prevail, while others argue that Broly, with his exponential power growth, could have had the upper hand if the fight had gone on longer. But the fight was interrupted, leaving that wanting more feeling. Just how far would Broly have gone in that battle? Did he evolve thanks to Gohan? Was this a battle of self-control, as described by Beerus, who said Gohan had more control over his powers? Then that's likely to be Broly's next training, controlling his emotions, achieving self-control. Because, as Vegeta himself described, Broly is the one who most gives off the aura of a beast. What a quote, my friends. We could end it here, but there's still one small factor. The difference between the old Broly's and the current one. The non-canon Broly, the one who appeared in the old Dragon Ball Z movies, carries a powerful legacy marked by his imposing presence, brutality, and a very specific type of madness. Even though his story isn't part of the current official timeline of Dragon Ball Super, for many years he was one of the most feared and idolized villains of the franchise, mainly due to his uncontrollable aura and legendary Super Saiyan form. However, when compared to the canon Broly reintroduced by Akira Toriyama in the Dragon Ball Super Broly movie, the differences become striking, not just in power level, but in emotional complexity and how each deals with growth and adaptability. The old Broly, from the 90s trilogy, was practically a soulless monster. Since his first appearance in the legendary Super Saiyan, he's portrayed as someone who carries an irrational hatred for Goku, stemming from a childhood trauma that, while not very convincing narratively, served as a trigger for his constant fury. That Broly wasn't adaptive in the traditional sense. He was incredibly powerful, yes, and his strength increased as the fight went on, but that was more due to an uncontrollable escalation of rage rather than learning or evolution in combat. He crushed opponents not out of intelligence, but through sheer power difference. Against Goku, Gohan, Trunks, and even Vegeta, he was an avalanche. But there was no refinement. It was power for the sake of power. And that power, although overwhelming, had limits. He was defeated by a collective attack when everyone combined their energies in a classic Dragon Ball ending, where unity overcomes uncontrolled fury. In the second and third films, Broly returns as a kind of undead driven by hatred, but it's notable that his power doesn't evolve significantly. He is defeated by Gohan and Goten in far less climactic scenarios. What we notice is that although he was threatening and visually impressive, that Broly was static, almost a repetitive entity. His role was that of an apocalyptic villain, an end in himself, without nuance, without growth. The Broly from Dragon Ball Super, on the other hand, is practically the opposite. He's a three-dimensional character with real emotions, a tragic past, and a sense of innocence that contrasts with his inner fury. His strength doesn't come only from rage, but from a latent survival instinct, from a body and mind that adapt in real time to combat pressure. When he fights Vegeta and Goku, it's clear how he learns from every blow. At first, he's clumsy, wild, but within minutes, he's already copying fighting patterns, anticipating movements, adjusting his attack style. His evolution is terrifying not because it's immediate, but because it's organic. He gets better every second. There's no rigidity, there's growth. And when we compare him to the old Broly, this becomes even more evident. While the 90s Broly was a colossus driven by repetitive, destructive rage, the current Broly is a force of nature in constant expansion, with a fragile psyche, but a body and spirit that absorb everything around him. He's not just stronger, he's more dangerous because he's constantly adapting. In other words, the old Broly was an endless war cry. The new Broly is a song building in intensity, note by note, toward a climax we don't yet know. And when he gets there, it might be that not even Goku, Vegeta, Gohan, or even the gods will be ready to face what this lone warrior will be capable of doing.